In this video, you're going to watch a data scientist work through a technical on-site round that includes SQL, stats, and a business case.
Johnny,
Hey,
right?
yes, Johnny. Nice to meet you. How's it going?
Nice to meet you. You're not related to Johnny Bravo at all, right? Or
Not at all, though. I can't say I haven't watched the show before. I did watch it definitely.
you got the same haircut and everything. It was like the first thing I noticed. Cool,
Yeah,
man.
there's definitely some similarities. Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this interview. Just wanted to start off with a little bit of logistics, just to give you a groundwork for kind of what we're going to go through during this time. We're going to be doing the interview for 45 minutes. It's going to be a technical round, and there's going to be three sections: a SQL section, a stats section, and a business use case that we're going to walk through together. Most of it will be more conversational in nature, though in the beginning, the first section is going to be the SQL section, and we will do go through a little bit of coding. So what I'm going to do is for that section, just give you a prompt, and if you can share your screen and just pull up a simple notepad and show me kind of how you would write things. It doesn't have to be a specific SQL syntax or anything, but just pseudo SQL, if that's a thing, like that would be good enough. So, any questions before we get started?
Uh, no. I'm guessing from the pseudo SQL part, we're not going to like obviously no AI, no ChatGPT on the side, and also no reference docs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you need like a specific function that's pretty like um, you know like we want to simulate the work environment as much as possible, uh, barring the ChatGPT AI stuff. So I think within reason you can definitely, but feel free to let me know if you're gonna look something up. That would be
Okay,
helpful.
sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So let's start with the first one. You're working with the rideshare company and you have access to the following tables. And here is a snippet just to be able to look at each table. So that is the first table.
Okay,
Let me know if that looks too weird.
it
Um,
should be okay. I'll go ahead and share the screen with the notepad.
Sounds great. And here's the second table.
Okay, cool. So we've got two. Uh, all right, let's see. We can format it a little bit. Uh, it's like we're going to be fighting this a little.
Yeah,
But in general, so I see we've got this. Okay, so trip, user ID, driver ID, city, distance, and the prompt over here. We are a rideshare company.
that's right.
Cool. Um, okay. This cool. Why don't I just okay. And then the second table, shorter, thank goodness.
Yeah,
Uh,
just three columns for that one.
cool. Okay, user ID, sign up date, um, user type. And so just understanding here, so I know trip is the trip, driver is the one who's working for Uber, and so user here is really our customer.
Hmm. That's right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of nailed it on the dot. There's two tables here. One that shows the trip data and some of the metadata around it, and then one is the users. And actually, I wanna clarify a little bit. Let me give you another row of that user table
Okay.
because the user type is relevant here. It could be the rider, but it could also be the driver in that user data as well.
Okay.
So you can feel free to paste in a second row. Yeah, and thanks for doing the formatting. I think it's actually helpful for me as well. So I appreciate it.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
great. So here's the first question. I'll paste it in as well so that you can have it while we're going through it. So the first one is write a SQL query to calculate the average trip distance per city. So obviously you don't have the whole data set here that you're looking at, but if you can just write a query that gets at how you would calculate that.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so when I write SQL, I immediately go, I know there's a select, there's my from, and then we'll have some other group bys or wheres. So we're talking about calculate average trip distance. So that's immediately like telling me, all right, so I want the average trip distance. It looks like it's provided here on the trip data. I'm going to make an assumption that the table name here for that is trips and the table name here is users. Is that
Oh
okay?
yeah, sorry about that. Yes, that was a copy and paste there. Yes.
You're good. Cool. So, all right. So I want average trip distance. So we've got distance kilometers, which is going to be from our trips table, and per city. So per city, if we're doing an average, we're going to need a group by. We can do this group by city here. So I believe this should give us the average distance of trips by city. And I guess we can add the city up top so that we know which distance connects to what city.
Okay, great. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right, let's move on to the next one. Find the top 5 users who are writers. We're talking about writers in this situation who spent the most in July of 2023, and be sure to include their total spend as well.
Okay. All right, so we're thinking top 5 users who spent the most. Okay, so explicitly writers here. In July 2023, it's like our time frame, include total spend. So our select statement, so we eventually want writers, which is probably going to be users.
Yes, I just want to clarify that because it wasn't clear in the schema there. User ID, it could also be writer ID. That's what should connect to that user ID column in the user data table.
Gotcha. Okay. So why don't maybe let's start a little simpler. Let's go with just select writers who spent money in July 23. So if I want writers, so let me just select, let me find all users who had a trip in July 2023. Now this July 2023 data is in our trips. So I'm going to need a join here into trips. On maybe like trips dot trip ID or trips dot user ID. And I should probably just make this a little bit more easier. Sorry, that was a pretty quick jump down.
Nice.
All right. So from users, left join trips on trips user ID equals, so we are the user table. So users.user ID. So now we've got users, trips. So we can now say where, so I wanted to do July 2023. So we've got trip dates here. So we should be able to do trips dot trip date maybe less than, we are 2023. So we want to be within 2023-07-1 and trips dot trip date less than 081. If I knew how many days were in July, I would I would use 731, but I don't remember if it's 30 or 31 days.
No, that seems perfect. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And one more thing here. So users could be riders or drivers, so we should probably make sure that we're always a driver. Or sorry, rider.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
So far, looks like we've got users, trips in July. So we still need total spend. So we just want top 5. So that's a pretty easy limit 5 there. And we want total spend. So spend is probably price. Trips.price USD. And we want the sum of that. So trips. Cool. So we're going to sum this up, but in order to do an aggregation, we'll need a group by. So let's group by. We want user ID at the end of it. I don't know if it'll get confused between the two tables user ID, so I'm just going to go with users. And then all right, let's read through this one more time. So find the top 5. So that's limit 5. Users or riders who spent the most. So we've got prices in July 2023. All right. I think that's my final answer.
Okay. Yeah, looks great. One question I had is whether what you think those first 5 rows would look like if you were to execute this the moment.
What they would look like? Well, I would have a user ID and the total spend on the
For that user. Yeah.
for that rider. Oh, but we're looking for top 5.
Yeah.
Oh, top 5. Good call. So that would be. I guess we need an order by, and we want top, and we want to do it by this column. So let's do as maybe trip, or let's do total spend, and then we can order by total spend sending.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, that looks really good. Awesome. Thank you. We'll quickly work through one more question, and this one just like let's maybe we can talk through how we would do this, and you can fill in and write as much code as you can. But we have about like a minute more for this section, so we'll try to burn through this. For each city, rank drivers by total earnings in August 2023.
Okay, so you said we had a minute, so I probably won't focus on coding too much and more on explaining what I'm thinking.
Sounds
So
good.
you want drivers by total earnings for each city. So I'm thinking we still have drivers. We're going to do a left join on trips to get our city data. And then we'll want to group by probably the cities and the drivers. Yeah, because this is kind of our tuple right here for each city drivers by total earnings. And I noticed this rank here. So I'm not too familiar with this, but I'm thinking maybe like a rank by rank over partition with city.
Yep.
And it looks like we're doing it over the total earnings. So maybe over like some sum of total earnings.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a very sensible approach to me. So, yeah, sounds great. Awesome. Okay, thanks for running through the this portion. I think writing code in front of and in an interview setting is never fun. So thanks for humoring me through that. We're going to move on to the next section, and
Okay.
this I will continue to paste questions to you in the so that you can have access to it, but
Okay.
you won't
Cool.
code as much. So we're going into more of the stats section here. So here is here is the prompt just to get started, and I'll walk through this so that we can have it together.
Do
So
you right before you start? Should I?
yes,
Will I need the notepad? Should I just like close
you
that?
think, yeah, you can feel free to close it. Yeah,
Okay.
thank
Cool.
you. Okay,
Nice.
awesome. So here's a scenario. You're running an A/B test for an online ad platform to evaluate a new bidding algorithm. So there's already one in place, and you're evaluating this new one, version B, against the current one, version A, and
Okay.
comparing click-through rates. So this is ads. So just the rate at which a user is looking at something, and then whether or not they've clicked. So after running the test for a few days, the results are as follows. Group A is the control group. It shows 1,200 clicks out of 60,000 impressions, a 2% click through rate. And then Group B is the test group, had 1,350 clicks out of the same number of impressions, 60K, at a 2.25 click through rate. So we see that just by, just by absolute comparison, there's a 0.25 percent increase. So the marketing team is eager to roll out the new algorithm immediately. And so here are the questions that we want to walk through regarding this. This is mostly a discussion meant to kind of talk through some of the statistical concepts. Okay. So first one, wanting to focus on the central limit theorem here. Why would the central limit theorem be essential? Like how does the central limit theorem play into and analyzing these results?
Yeah. So the central limit theorem, uh, as I understand it, allows us to um, take results from a sample and uh, say, and it kind of gives us this distribution, or it allows us to take the results of a sample and apply it on a normal distribution, even if the total population might be skewed.
Hmm.
So taking that knowledge, and for these particular results, um, it looks like the test was run on 60,000 impressions, which is a pretty good sample size, I think, unless you're
Hmm.
like Amazon or something with millions. But hopefully, this is actually a big enough sample size that um, we can we can now apply a normal distribution to this and therefore make statistical decisions or run statistical metrics such as the z-score, standard
Hmm.
error, or etc.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Awesome. And so regarding those statistical tests, um, that kind of segues well into the next question. How would you determine whether this difference that we're seeing is meaningful enough to justify a rollout? Like, how would you just talk me through like what kinds of things you would look into, and how that would play into how the results of those things would play into informing the recommendation you might make.
Yeah, I think well, we want to identify the statistical significance. So 0.25% is, I guess, our absolute lift in this case. And what we'd want to do is we're trying to figure out the p value. And given some alpha, such as like 0.05, if our p-value given these inputs is much smaller than 0.05, that would tell us that, hey, this test is actually statistically significant. So that would be one sort of check mark I'd want to make sure of. The other thing is on the cost side. So even if we've established that this is statistically significant, we'd also want to make sure that if we do deploy our new model, that it it kind of the profit is going to be greater than the actual cost of deploying the model. And so there are some metrics that we can use to compare the
Okay.
profit
Yeah,
cost.
that sounds great. So going back to the statistically significant portion, how would you help a marketer? Like, let's say the marketer has very, very like thin statistical background. How would you help them understand like what that means, like statistically significant and the p-value and the 0.05? Like, could you help create? Could you help provide like an intuitive understanding of why that leads to like, hey, this difference actually is meaningful?
Um, that might be tough. The My understanding is that although we're seeing changes, how would I frame it? So what we're seeing is changes in a very small sample, and we want to make sure that uh, these changes will scale to the larger population. And there are some times where we may see like a 0.25% in a small population, but when we actually deploy it into the larger population, uh, that number could actually drop and be closer to zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.01. And we want to make sure by using the statistics, using these central limit theorem, these confidence interval tests, we're doing our due diligence to make sure that this 0.25% that we see in the sample, it will be the same 0.25% or better uh, in production.
Okay, yeah. So if I'm understanding correctly, like the statistical significance, it points to some indicator that that difference is real when we deploy it to the greater population. Is that how? Is that a good way of understanding kind of what you were saying there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. And then going into the cost side, how would you like how would you put that into metrics? If you were to, so I think it was a really good call out that you have to consider the rollout costs relative to the potential lift it would bring.
Mm.
What numbers would you consider bringing to this marketing stakeholder group as you're bringing this analysis to them, as you're talking about the rollout plan to them?
Yeah. Some things that I might start thinking about, hey, what is our uh, ROI? So right now we have 2% CTR, which is click through rate. Um, how does that translate into profits, right? Does that extra, right now it's just a number. How do we translate that into a dollar amount? So we might have some data about, well, maybe 1% click through rate gives us some net profit of like $1,000. And so an extra 0.25% is like, all right, we're getting, I don't know the math, like $200, let's just say, uh,
Mm,
or it's probably 250 that we're getting. So uh, using that, we might calculate our ROI, our
mhm,
return on investment. Um, another, uh, that's definitely one metric. The other metric I want to say is MDE. which I'm forgetting the meaning.
Mhm.
Oof. But I'll
The
stick with ROI then. Yeah,
minimum detection effect, is that the one you're referring to?
I believe so. Yeah, minimum detection.
Yeah.
The definition is escaping me right now.
Yeah.
Apologies.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, I think the ROI is a great call out. I think it's a good place to start, and it's something that the marketing stakeholders will definitely understand. So I think it's a really good place to kind of like um, bridge the gap. Yeah. So okay, that sounds great. Okay, so let's move on to the third question in this section, which is what would break our ability to do this analysis? So this is pointing back to the central limit theorem concepts that we had just talked about. As you had mentioned, that it kind of like underpins our ability to do an analysis like this to begin with. So if you could help me to understand, like in what circumstances would we not be able to use those assumptions that we laid out?
Yeah, I think there's a uh, few items I'm thinking about. One of them is the segmentation. If we were to find out that, hey, we didn't have a good distribution of segments. So, for example, maybe we only got PC users on our A side and device users on our B side. That's a clear skew,
Yeah.
which would break that central limit theorem.
Mhm.
Um, that's the one my mind goes to. Sample. There's another one, early peaking. So this
Mm,
idea that the more times, if this is maybe the third or fourth time we're running this test, this actually increases the likelihood that maybe this actually increases the likelihood that there was a false positive. And the false positive being that out of the four times we ran it in the example, the fourth time showed a significant, like a statistical significance. And we want to avoid that because the other three were normal.
mhm,
So
mhm.
uh, I'd probably start with those two.
Yeah, yeah, those are really good. Considering ad as the industry here, are there
Mhm.
any things that you can think of that would create some potential weirdness or like things that are like maybe normal about the ad industry, but is would introduce kind of gotchas and things to watch out for um, as we look at this data?
Yeah. Okay. So ad bidding algorithm. So probably I think of ads and I just immediately think politics. Like,
Mm,
so there are certain very charged subjects
yeah.
uh, that would that could like skew the results one way or the other, versus a more kind of stable topic such as, I don't know, chicken eggs. Like
Mm,
who doesn't hate chicken eggs? Uh,
yeah.
so that could be one example where like now we've got this. People already have their own biases about the ads, and so they might choose A or B based on their own personal biases instead of uh, the actual test.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And then last question I wanted to follow up about this one is what questions might you want to ask about like how the data was sampled? When you think about the control in the test here,
Yeah.
there conveniently hasn't been given to you many details about how the data was sampled. So what questions might you want to ask just to make sure you're covering your bases?
Yeah. So, in terms of sampling, uh, there's a fancy metric I think called SRM, but
Mm,
try not to dive into that. Probably I'd want to ask like, hey, um, w- uh, so it's ad bidding on top of this. I'd want to know kind of how they decided. Um, was it a random sample? Were these segments or were these divided on a particular customer segment? How was the sample actually recorded? Like, did we actually, when we were recording it, was there a network outage in between? Was there some kind of external economic indicator or something that could have um, possibly skewed the results during the case of the test?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from there is like it sounds like you want to really make sure that the two samples weren't taken differently because of some situation, some aberration that could have happened. Yeah, I think those are really good ways to think about that. So awesome. Okay, great. We're making good progress on time here, so we're going to move on to the last section, the business case analysis. So we're going to switch gears. Yeah, we've been kind of switching gears each time, but this one we're going to go to food delivery. So
Cool.
now, now you're a data scientist at a food delivery company, and over the past quarter, you noticed a 15% drop in order volume in your largest market. So leadership, understandably, wants someone to investigate, and they've asked you to investigate and to recommend actions. So you have access to customer orders, delivery times, ratings, marketing spend data. You may or may not use all of this data, but that's what you have at your disposal at the moment. And
Okay.
so this one is fairly open ended, and again, like would love to just have discussions around it, and feel free to ask any questions for clarification. And so we'll start with a very open-ended question: where would you start and why? And yeah, feel free to just I guess put to words and articulate as much of your thought process as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear 15% drop and I'm thinking about, am I going to lose my job soon? But we've got uh, obviously, that is a huge marker, something that I'm thinking about. Did this happen all at once? Was it a sudden event? Or did this happen gradually over time? I'd want to probably focus on, given that time nature, looking at temporal data.
Mm,
So, for example, an easy one might be, hey, what does my delivery times look like over time? What is my uh, looking at marketing spend data? So uh, maybe did we have changes in marketing spend? Has it been relatively similar? I'd also might want to compare it not just against. I might also want to compare these trends against the same time period last year to see if, like, hey, maybe this is kind of expected for a business.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's great. So let's focus in on the temporal data.
Okay.
Um, So, what hypotheses would you want to form as you think about this particular area?
Yeah. So, well, we're thinking food delivery. Um, so I almost want to say, has there been a change in drivers? Maybe. So the order history. So have the ratings kind of been going down? Are we seeing a correlation between orders and ratings? Um, that would be one of them. Marketing spend could be huge. I mean, that is exactly how we get customers onto our platform. Um, are we losing like conversion rate there? Uh, and the third one is, I kind of want to stick with seasonality, or in general some sort of external factor. And maybe we could look at, like, I would say, like, maybe customer order trends by year, and
Mhm.
kind of like compare them and see, are we seeing the same sort of trends?
Okay. Yeah. Um, okay. So let's just deep dive a little bit into one of these areas. So the first one you mentioned, the change in drivers, looking at order history and ratings. What are some of the like if you were to form like a testable hypothesis, where would you go with that? You know, trying to trying to detect some change in drivers using order history and ratings.
Yeah. Drivers order history rating. So, and we're trying to track order volume drop. So, driver history. Something I think about is maybe there's a subsection of drivers that is causing orders or users who have ordered from them to uh, not order again. So because of an order that came in from a particular driver, will the user order again or will they not? So that could be one sort of testable hypothesis.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then so how would your strategy or how would your thoughts on these things change if you saw a sudden drop in 15% in this largest market versus like a gradual drop over a quarter, let's say?
Yeah, if it was sudden, um, I'm thinking there was probably a flip that was switched. I think more like um, like a flip that was switched. Like maybe there was an update that happened right on that time because we're thinking about like, hey, it's a food. I'm presuming an app here or maybe a website. I'd track it to a singular event um, versus if it's something gradual. Um, I'm thinking more larger trends. Maybe there was a TikTok someone made and it's slowly blowing up. And as more and more users are seeing it, it's affecting their ordering habits.
Mm,
Or maybe there's an economic factor like, I don't know, maybe the stimulus checks have stopped. And so people just aren't ordering as much food. Um,
mhm.
so,
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. Um, and yeah, so when it comes to like the gradual um, uh, kind of seasonal trend changes that are
mhm,
happening. Let's say we take the hypothesis that you mentioned of maybe there's a subsection of drivers that are causing orders to not happen again
mhm.
because of something. Maybe it's a bad experience. Maybe it's um,
Delivery times.
delivery times. Maybe yeah. Maybe it's there's something there, and you see a correlation between that and ratings.
Mhm.
So that what is the metric, like let's get really granular, let's try to get as granular as we can. What is the actual metric you would want to calculate when you are trying to test this hypothesis?
Right. So we're thinking like some sort of success metric. Um, so the user, uh, so a subsection of drivers, and our success is whether a user actually orders again. Um, so I think I don't know what the name of it would be, but we'd specifically be testing, hey, does the percentage of users that order again uh, given a particular driver?
Okay, and that would be all time. So if a user, how much time can elapse for a particular user to order again?
Uh, well, we should probably define like some baseline. So before this period, what was the average time between orders? Um, and then use that as the interval in our metric.
Mm, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And when you say given a particular driver, so percent of users that order again given a particular driver, so is
Mhm.
this one metric for each driver, or how would you? aggregate, if you would.
Yeah, so I, I'd want to be on the per driver level, but obviously there's a number of drivers in the database. So we would need a way to kind of compile this metric so we can get per average driver. Um, I want to say average as well. If we average the value, well, so we have average. There's also median, is what I'm thinking of, and I'm trying to see like, hey, what would make more sense? I guess I'd have to know a little bit more about the data
Mm,
to make a decision about median or average.
yeah. So between median or average, like, do you have something like a criteria in mind for when, like, so how would the data need to look for you to use average versus median, would you say?
Yeah, so if the distribution of the per driver metric is closer to normal, I'd want to use average versus if it was skewed, and especially if we have large outliers, I'd want to use median instead.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Um, and then just maybe one last thing there is, what if the distribution looked like a really long tail where
Okay.
you have a couple of drivers who are taking up like 80% of the orders, and then like the average driver is taking like very few orders?
Okay. So in the case that there's a subsection, so there's we could rely on median. We could also decide to chop off some of those outliers just outright in order to get a better performance. We'd have to be careful about what type of error. Like we don't want we don't want to cut off too much, but we might have a threshold so that we're not polluting our data and our statistics with this group that maybe only happens 5% of the time. Five.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then last question I want to ask here is, so that seems like a good metric overall to use. Are there any like guardrail metrics or any like counter metrics you'd want to measure while looking at this, just so that you're not you're kind of being cognizant of any potential trade-offs that the results of this analysis can cause?
Yeah, as we go through this data, I'd want to make sure that we're not affecting like latency, for example. As we're doing these tests, we want to make sure we're not adversely affecting order, like the number of orders coming in. We don't want to start the test and orders
Yeah.
nosedive even further. Um, so those are like two examples of guardrails where we don't want to affect our main product um,
Mhm.
while we conduct this test.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like the experience of the product, and then making sure that the business is staying stable uh, while we're yeah, looking through. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, yeah. So those are all the questions that I had for you today. Um, so thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview,
Hey,
and yeah, it was really nice to meet you.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was the mock interview. Khalid, what did you think about the candidate? How was their performance to you?
Uh, it was okay. It was definitely, I think, um, they had a strong start in the beginning. Kind of as we started getting into more of the statistics side, I felt there was a bit more of a general, like a high level view, uh, and maybe there was a little bit of struggle. I know, like he wasn't able to go into MDE a little bit. Um, something to note there. I don't know if how that'll play in the larger role.
Yeah. Johnny, what do you think? Does that track what Khalid's saying?
Yeah, I would totally agree that the candidate was really strong in the beginning with the sequel. I think he did a really great job of different aspects of that section overall. Um, I think so that I can kind of dig into it section by section since
Yeah, that'd be great.
yeah, I think so. For the first section, um, the first two questions, the candidate nailed it out of the park. The only thing there was that he used a left join, where I think we could have used an inner join, which is more efficient generally. Um, the other thing, high level to note, is that with these tables, I generally like it's helpful when the candidate pushes the interviewer to ask about the whether or not the rows for each table are unique, because that's
Mm,
going to determine how the SQL should be written out. I think in the understanding the table section of that section, I guess, um, like
mhm,
just general tip, pushing the interviewer to give you as much information about the tables, like and unique, whether or not the ID is unique, making these, making it really explicit what assumptions you're making there
mhm.
is really helpful, because at the end of the day, if you're a SQL practitioner, you know that like all of the bugs that you have, not all of it, like 80% is probably in the joins and these kinds of places. So just knowing to ask those questions is a good, in my experience, I think that's a good way to conduct those interviews. The third question was not very well worded, in my opinion. So that's a dock on the interviewer, I would say. But it was meant to get at the window function, like the rank window function.
Mm,
And I think the candidate did a good job of articulating how that is should be written out. But we ran out of time to be able to get to that. So part of that is I'm not sure if there were too many questions for the amount of time we've allotted. But so that so yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like I think it
did
was
it
a
did it feel realistic, Khalid? Did the interview, just in terms of surface area covered, did it feel realistic for you?
Yeah, it did, and something that you mentioned, I think on the first one, which I was also hesitating to. I didn't know if I should bring up. I think the candidate was focused a lot more on solving the problem, and it's hard sometimes to like, hey, what sort of how do you engage the interviewer
mm,
while you're building the SQL query and you're kind of like thinking your thoughts aloud. When you mentioned unique values, another question that popped into my head was, should I bring up missing values or null
mm,
values? How are we going to track that in these queries?
yeah.
Uh, so that's probably another question that could have been asked.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that would, yeah, those are generally, in my experience, pretty helpful. Yeah, moving on to the stats section, I thought overall it was pretty good.
So
Candidate did, oh,
Khalid said that this was the weakest section. Was this Khalid's weakest section? Was this the candidate's weakest section? Yeah.
I would say if I had to choose, yes, because I think the first section was strong and the last section was strong. Um,
Okay.
Here, I think the candidate did a great job of explaining the central limit theorem at the first question, um, and I think also like I had strong signal, or I guess the interviewer had a strong signal on whether or not the candidate would be able to implement like a test to be able to compare and analyze the results. So I didn't
Hmm.
really have any questions there. I think where I found a little bit of a gap was when we started to talk about maybe the more intuitive explanation for statistical significance. And that's relevant because generally, like, I think more experienced data scientists will have to interface with non-technical stakeholders quite a bit, and so
Mm.
that actually is a pretty relevant skill set to test for in an interview setting like this. And so being able to articulate like, hey, it's because intuitively, there's this distribution we assume about these two groups, and if they're both coming from the same group, then the difference would be like not statistically significant. But if they're actually coming from two different distributions, then it is statistically significant, and that's what this test is measuring, so that they can see that, oh yeah, like this difference is a real difference. That kind of
Mm.
explanation is what marketers would be able to understand a little better. So that I wouldn't necessarily dock a candidate for that one, but I think it's like a seniority level, like experience level signal, I would say.
Just as your own experience as an interviewer, Khalid, you probably have done these kind of stats like questions before. Can you can you can you speak a little bit to this point that Johnny just made about like that kind of communication to non-technical stakeholders that can make it make sense for them? Can you speak to that? Is that in your mind a seniority signal as well?
Uh, yeah, I do want
Nice.
to like be upfront here that I have done data science kind of early on in my career, and then have swapped into full stack, and so I'm kind of now coming back in. So,
Cool.
which is why that maybe you might understand in the interview that I kind of I kind of still remember the high level ideas, but I was at that level of time, and the position that I was at, I was doing a lot more implementation. Um, and so it shows even in the interview, as you can see, where um, I get what I need to use and how to do it, but not so much. I seem to be missing some of that kind of like foundational stuff of, okay, how do you break down this idea for other stakeholders? Like,
It's okay. It's okay.
really, I mean, honestly, Johnny was like super accurate. He was like, yeah, I can tell he knows how to do it, but I'm not sure that he's done it before.
Yeah, but everyone can relate to this that's doing a career pivot or is getting back into data science. Do you two have any recommendations for people to strengthen that skill, whether they're rusty and getting back into DS or just like pivoting into DS as a career?
I feel like there's such a difficult balance right now, and so one thing I'd love to talk about is like the roles, right? As an applied AI or applied ML, you don't really
Mm,
need to know some of this foundational level stuff. I
Mm.
would argue that all you need to know is that I'm making an API call to ChatGPT or an agent,
hmm.
and that'll help you get the job done. Whereas
Right.
something like a data science role is, maybe Johnny can speak more to this. As a data science role, you really have to understand some of the statistics and the math part in order to make a better decisions and really be able to do the job properly. Would you agree with that, Johnny?
Yeah, I totally would. And yeah, I think for the most part, like it depends on the kind of data science role as well. Data scientist is like kind of a broad term in my experience, like company to company, and it's usually some mix of the analysis slash almost like consultant, like product manager, like kind of type of person, and then the engineer type person who's like implementing stuff and like actually coding or whatnot. And the scales of like what's more like prominent in the role, it's kind of differs company to company. Where I'm at right now at Meta, it's very much like these communication skills are very important, and they expect the data scientists to kind of stand on their own feet in terms of being able to drive conversations and influence and things like that. Um, Other roles, it's more like your engineering work is kind of where they're focused on. So I really think it depends there. I think at a like having said that, I think being able to communicate to non-stakeholders generally is like a seniority experience level kind of skill set to have. So it's always good, but like when you need that, like how important is that for the hire specifically? Like I don't. That's why I said it's more like a seniority signal um, than a like hire versus non-hire. I think.
Awesome. Awesome. Really, really cool. What about that last section, the business case? Johnny, what are your notes here?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. On the whole, if I had to stack rank just for clarity, I would say the SQL section was the best, and then this was the
Hmm.
second. and then the stats section on. I think for this section, what I generally look for is structured thinking and
Hmm.
the ability to start out with kind of like an exploration level and then hone into hypotheses. And as we go down, be able to actually develop the metrics and maybe even a test, design a test to validate those hypotheses. So on the whole, I think that the candidate did really well. I think but here also like a measure of deeper experience would be if the candidate can go end to end with that on their own and kind of drive the conversation forward. I think the interviewer had to do a little bit of kind of um, through the questions, kind of shaping the answers along the way. So I guess what I mean by that is um, uh, I think up till like what hypothesis do you have for this drop, like that question, like it's okay, but then from there on being able to move to hypotheses that make sense, and then like kind of going deeper and kind of driving the whole flow of the analysis um, in the conversation. That's something I would that the yeah that I would look for as an interviewer, I guess. And so I think they're like my experience was that as when I asked a question, there were answers there that were pretty solid. But I think if there was a little bit more of like kind of being able to present the whole picture in a fuller way and to kind of drive and kind of maybe stop and at checkpoints to check with the interviewer to see if this is the right direction to go into. That's something that generally shows like comfort level with the structured thinking and experience having done end-to-end analysis of these kinds of things of these types.
Amazing. Amazing analysis. Before we get Johnny's decision, any other things that either of you wanted to say, point out about what was interesting or cool or unexpected about this interview?
Uh, I, I didn't realize how much stats would. Again, this is like coming from someone who's getting back into data science. I didn't realize the stats portion was very intriguing to me. It's like, wow, this is a lot of statistics. Um, Kind of my thoughts, sort of my expectation coming in was like, oh, this was going to be a design a recommendation system for Google, and you go start from the beginning of the pipeline. You do some of the high level building blocks, and then you dive deeper. But the reality is that it seems to be a little bit more targeted on the like statistics, especially, and then the metrics portion. Um, that was, I think, one of my biggest notice. The other one, really interesting to hear Johnny say like I should be the one driving, or the candidate rather should be the one driving the conversation.
Right.
That's definitely a tip that I'm going to keep in the back of my head, because I guess my mindset was definitely, here are the options.
Mm,
It's up to you as the stakeholder to decide which one of these paths you think we should go down.
mm.
So that's definitely a tweak that I'll probably um, take with me.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in to say I think like to your first point, it might be that this is more of a certain type of data scientist interview that we're doing right now relative to the maybe more AI engineer type roles. It sounds like that you might be maybe perhaps aiming for as well. So yeah, I would take that with the grain of salt, like in that like it might not be as stats heavy as some of those AI engineering roles, for example, might not be as stats heavy as um, like a data scientist role. So I don't really know. Like a lot of those roles are like brand new too. So yeah, that's something I
Cool.
just want to.
All right. And Johnny, your decision for this candidate.
Yeah, I think for like an entry to mid level, it's definitely a hire. I think at the senior level, I think there were some things that I saw as gaps, but overall, yeah, I would have been happy to have somebody like this on the team.
All right.
Thank you.
That's all we got. Well done. And thank you for watching.